Hello and welcome back to Nolan Financial Radio. My name is Tara Nolan from Nolan Financial. And if you're just tuning into the show for the first time, I definitely wanted to open up that if you have a question, you can give Chris and I a call at 719-210-4242. We believe that financial success always starts with education and asking good questions. So I'm glad you're listening to the show, because hopefully out of every radio show, what your takeaway is you have another good question in your hip pocket to ask, because we all have the team of experts that we work with, our CPAs and our financial planners and different family and friends. So it's always nice to have some good questions to ask, because we're all a little different, and it's nice to go, I heard this question and I wonder how it applies to me. So definitely you can give Chris and I a call at 719-210-4242. I would also ask you to visit our website at www.taraenolan.com. While you're there, you can click on the radio page, because we record all these shows and we do a lot of educational topics. So you can go back and listen to things on Social Security, IRAs, 401ks. We talk about a lot of things. So it's a lot of fun, and encourage you to do that. And you can also subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. So today we're going to be talking about some eye-popping retirement statistics. And I don't ever like to be negative. I like to keep the show as light and positive as we can. But today's one of those shows where we're going to talk a little bit about here's why taking care of yourself matters. And I'm writing my book, Wealth is a Team Sport. And one of the things that I'm really digging into is the psychology of taking care of yourself. It's just so much more emotion than math. And how do I get you to help yourself? So that's my ulterior motive in all of this with the radio show. But before we jump into the radio show, I wanted to check in with my amazing co-host, Tony Shore. Tony, how are you doing today?
Oh, I am doing great. Thanks for asking, Tara. I've had an amazing week, and just been, the weather. I think I'm going to be able to get back outside again maybe this weekend.
Finally.
So that'll be good. But yeah, I've been keeping busy. Just there's a lot going on. I have one son who's finishing up college, and my daughter is graduating high school this year and preparing to go to school. And we just found out she got a full scholarship, so to a really nice school. So that's huge, and we're still reeling from that great news that we had a couple weeks ago. So good, everything's great here. Excited about the topic today. That's a good one. Eye-popping retirement stats. But Tara, first, how have you been? What's going on over there?
Tony, kind of the same. I'm having a blast working on writing the book, Wealth is a Team Sport. I've got a team that's developing a whole new website, and we're going to start doing also some live streaming and doing interview shows, and we have the radio show. And then I'm writing this book. And I have to tell you the truth, Tony, it's kind of like I assigned myself a term paper.
Oh,
but
writing a book is a lot of work, isn't it?
It's exciting, but at the end of the day, you have to sit down and write. So, but it's really helping me get very clear on my thoughts and how I want to communicate. Because Tony, at the end of the day, it all comes down to how well we communicate with each other, because we're trying to get everybody to a better place. And it's all about, you have to understand why you're doing the things you're doing, and then how you're going to do those things, and putting the stories together so people understand it. So that's going to be my life for the rest of this year.
Sure. I can't wait to read the book. Now, I realize that it's about helping people in finances, but are there any funny stories in there that you tell about Chris? your business partner and husband, Chris, does he make it into the book at all?
He's not in there yet, but there's still time.
That's right. You're still working on it. I hope Chris is doing well. I know he's been meeting with clients and answering a lot of our listeners' questions, as have you. And again, I know, Tara, you love talking to people about this. So I would encourage our listeners to contact you to set up a complimentary or a no-cost consultation, I should say. And that's very, very helpful. And I know listeners might call and say, hey, why don't you talk about this topic on the show? I really want to hear about this. And I know you're more than open to that. So I encourage our listeners to give you a call. What's that phone number again?
Sure, Tony. That number is 719-210-4242.
Yeah, they should pick up the phone and call. We've got to give Chris something to do while we're recording the show. He can be answering phones, right?
Exactly. I appreciate the help.
I love Chris. We'll have to have him back on the show soon. But let's get into our topic for today. I mean, I think that there's a lot going on here. I make the stats because retirement, there's a lot to it. I'm not surprised that there are eye-popping stats. We've talked about a few of them on past shows, and it's a great way to give the listeners some quick information that can make a big difference. Now, how do you want to get this started today, Tara?
Tony, I think we're just going to jump right in because, I was reading this article from the Motley Fool, one of my favorite resources. It was 40 sad facts about retirement, but the information wasn't that sad, but it's good information to know. And I think we're just going to jump right in, Tony. So the article's first big stat is that Social Security is designed to replace just 40% of your pre-retirement income. Now, Tony, we've talked about Social Security before. In 1935, President Roosevelt developed Social Security. It was never designed to be a retirement plan. It was really always designed just to be an offset for older people who were struggling. And so, but it has shifted because it has become pretty foundational for a lot of people today. But so Social Security, though, it's not going to be your retirement plan. It's a part of it. So about 40%. But Tony, what this means is that for every $10 you made in pre-retirement, Social Security is going to pay about $4. So for high income people, it could even be lower than that because there's just, there's a range. And so it's just important to understand that Social Security, it's great because it's guaranteed. It doesn't matter like the quality of your health. You don't have to take like a medical exam like you would for life insurance or things like that. But it's not going to be enough to cover your entire retirement the way you would like to live in retirement.
Oh, yeah. No, Social Security isn't going to cover it all. And, and we don't want to take a pay cut in retirement. Who wants that? So you really need a plan in place. And that's an attention-getting stat because some people out there, Tara, especially probably younger workers, can sometimes fall into that trap of thinking, hey, Social Security is kind of the end-all, be-all of building a retirement strategy. Maybe I've got a 401k, I put a little bit into it. But the reality is it should just be one component. Maybe it's the foundation, and it's an important one, but it's just that foundation and that bottom layer of your retirement strategy, right?
It really is, Tony, and I'm glad you brought that up because we have had a few clients come through in the last couple of months, Tony, that they have a job, but they have elected to not even contribute to their 401ks.
Not good.
And so we're trying to rectify that, but it just comes down to that lack of understanding, and people don't know what they need to be doing and what they should be doing. So, that's why we have the show, is to help people get educated and try to do the best you can.
Right. Exactly.
You're working hard, so your money should be working hard for you.
Right. Exactly. So what's next?
Well, the next thing is that it's really interesting. I didn't know it was this high. Almost 55% of workers are leaving the labor force sooner than they anticipated. And I mean, we've talked about, Tony, before, how people are moving from job to job. It's not like it was for our grandparents where you had one job and you worked that until you retired. So we're used to people having multiple jobs. But it's interesting that almost 55% of the workforce is leaving early. And that affects a lot of things because it affects your contributions to Social Security. It affects how your 401ks grow. And it's unfortunate, Tony, when people are leaving because of their health, right? Because it's not a choice.
Yeah. That's one reason a lot of people do leave early, and job jumping and maybe leaving the workforce too soon. That crystallizes the need to have a really nimble financial strategy that's going to help you quickly maneuver and pivot as your situation changes. And therein lies the need to work with a financial professional like yourself.
It really helps, Tony, because it really floored me that the article, it states what I'm seeing in reality is only 6 in 10 people are really saving for retirement.
Wow.
And, that just makes me feel afraid for people because my goal is to make sure that people never run out of money. And so while it's great that 60% of the people are doing things like taking advantage of their IRAs, their 401ks, those other 40%, Tony, that's a lot of people. Our country's pretty big.
Yeah.
And I just saving for retirement. And I'm going to talk about that in the book, Tony. It's really been interesting looking at, even back in like ancient Greek times, there were pension plans, but the way we've paid pensions changed in the 60s and it changed again. and it's because of changes in the tax code. And so I
Yeah.
think we're still going through that shift. Like even my grandfather had a really good pension from his company. So my parents didn't learn about money because they didn't need to, because there was always a pension. And so we're getting into a segment of society now, Tony, where there's just not pensions in play, but people haven't caught up to realize they need to plan for it themselves.
Yeah, except for a lucky few, a smaller percentage of Americans out there don't have pensions. There's a huge percentage. I mean, a small do have pensions, and a big percentage don't. I mean, the pension has gone the way of the pension, as I like to say. I mean, buffaloes are coming back, but pensions are going away. So we say the pension's gone the way of the pension, and that's a great point. I mean, and when you say 40% of people out there aren't saving even a nickel for retirement right now, that's a huge number. I mean, if anybody today or any of our listeners are in that 40% category, they really need to consider working with somebody like yourself, Tara, a financial services professional, to get them back on the right track, right?
I recommend it, Tony, because there's just too much to know. And it's really hard when you try to do everything by yourself, because you're working, whatever you're doing, you have your own job that you're focusing on and your family. And it's hard to also try to be your own financial professional on top of everything.
Right.
Unless you love it. But most people really don't.
Yeah, exactly.
And so then that just brings us, Tony, now to this next stat, is that people might want to consider stepping up what they're putting towards retirement, because I'm going to do some numbers. So I'll actually make a conscious effort to slow down a little bit so you can catch this. Because the average retirement savings for families age 56 to 61, Tony, is $163,000. So if you apply the 4% rule, so this 4% rule is a pretty common planning factor that just suggests that you withdraw 4% of your savings in retirement, and then that's going to give you enough to live on. So you want to ideally have a nest egg big enough that you can pull 4% off, because that's about what you'll earn and accounting for inflation and have enough to live on. But Tony, if you only have $163,000, that's going to let you pull $6,500. And you can't live on $6,500 a year. You just can't.
For annual, that's 65 annually, $6,500. Yeah, not 65,000. That's not going to cut it. And even on top of Social Security, that's not going to cut it. I mean, most people need that a month to maintain their lifestyle. So that's a sad state of affairs. We gotta have more, right?
It's better, right? And I always like to overplan, because I mean, if you have extra, that's okay. You don't want to have less.
Right.
That's just my military planning coming out, that like we can overplan, but you don't want to be like short.
Right. And that's why, but you don't have to do it alone, Tara. That's why we work with somebody like yourself. Really, you need a financial professional to help you with this. Ultimately, I know there are some income earning tools that you can add to your strategy that may put you on firmer footing, right? So what's next? What do you have for us next on this?
Well, and Tony, you just kind of hit the nail on the head. Is there are a lot of ways to help save you for retirement. And that's part of what you want to do when you sit down and look at your whole plan of what you're doing. You'll probably have some Social Security. Hopefully, if you're working, you've got a 401k. An IRA is another vehicle. And an IRA, it's just a tax status, but it allows you to put money away for the future. And you can either do it traditionally, so that you get a tax deduction today, or you can do the Roth, so you pay your taxes today and let your money grow tax-free. So, but there's a lot of people that just don't think about it. And, that's the whole thing, Tony, with retirement planning. I think people just don't realize how important it is until they get closer to it, where if you take a little time now, and even if you just take baby steps and just start doing a little bit, I can tell you your 60-year-old self is going to thank you a lot, because if your 30-year-old self starts doing it today.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's great. And this has been a really great show so far today, Tara. And let's keep it rolling. We should probably, though, take a minute to let our listeners know once again how to get a hold of you. What's that phone number?
Sure, Tony. The phone number is 719-210-4242. And especially, Tony, for the folks listening today that really feel like they want a second opinion, or I know a lot of people feel like they're so overwhelmed and they don't make enough money to start investing, but it's a great time to sit down and just figure out what are some baby steps to get started. It's really important.
Yeah, it is. And I would mention the website, but we're going to wait for the big website reveal because I know you have a brand new website coming. It's going to be huge. People are going to be amazed, and a lot of resources, great looking website, videos to watch. So that's awesome. Can't wait for that, Tara. But let's keep moving. Let's jump into our next segment here. During the show, we're talking about these eye-popping financial statistics, and some of them have been eye-popping. Some of those stats really caught my attention. So how do you want to get this segment rolling, Tara?
So, Tony, we're going to jump right in and we're going to talk about 401ks. And we do whole shows on it, but I want to foot stomp today. If you are working at a job that has a 401k, there's probably matching. And you need to find out what that matching is and make sure you're taking advantage of 100% of that matching. Yep. And Tony, this is a step that a lot of people just either they forget it or they miss it, but you can call your HR department at any time and say, hey, I need to look at my 401k. I need to make sure I'm taking advantage of all of the matching, because that's as close to free money as you're going to get, because your employer will match what you're putting in. And that's a great tool that's out there. And Tony, this article talked about 20% of Americans aren't taking advantage of it. They may have a 401k, but they're not taking advantage of the matching. And so it really makes a big difference if the company is going to match 4% of what you put in there. That's like 8%. That's a big deal. And so Tony, I can't tell you how many people I sit down with. It's just a very normal thing. And that's like the first homework assignment I give most people is go check out your 401k and make sure you're taking advantage of the matching.
Yeah, because that's important. That's so important. Yeah, we really, do not leave that money on the table. We shout it from the rooftops, really. So that's good. And 401ks, so many people now have them, and there's a lot to 401ks too, and you need to make sure that you're getting as much out of them as possible. And I don't think you have to be a financial whiz to know that you don't turn down free money, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't turn down free money.
Yeah. So I know. So what's next?
This next one, Tony, I don't like this one, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, there is always discussion about Social Security is going to run out of money. And here's the thing is what happened is when we had our big, Gulf Wars, Congress borrowed money from the Social Security pile of money to pay for those wars, and that money hasn't been paid back. Yep. So this is a large thing at the congressional level that will be solved by our leadership, which that doesn't make us feel better probably. But but the thing is usually when you look at Social Security, a big part of Social Security is the disability portion. And generally what's happening is the Social Security benefit that most people receive, that part is okay, but where it gets in trouble is, it's unfortunate, but it's for the families with disabilities or the widows and those kind of situations. But I would just say at this point, I don't think you should lose sleep overnight worrying about Social Security going away, because Tony, that would be such a much bigger issue for the whole country that I have to keep faith that our Congress would finally come together on something like that and make sure it happens. Well, so I don't like to make decisions based on a what if, like what if this goes away?
Right. And Tara, we've been here before. When I was in high school in the 80s, I shouldn't date myself, but I remember hearing in the early 80s as a kid, I remember hearing my parents talk about it. It was on the news that Social Security was only going to be solvent into the early 90s, right? Right. I forget what the date was that they gave. It was like 1993 or so, something like that. And this has happened before, and they're always talking about it because news likes to latch on, and they if you do the math, but every time they end up shoring up Social Security, so to speak. No pun intended. They shore it up. But the thing is, Tara, is they will make changes. It's the political third rail. Nobody's going to. I mean, Social Security is the third rail of politics. It's hot. You'll electrify yourself. You'll get electrocuted as a politician if you touch it. So nobody's going to let Social Security stumble. They may have to make some adjustments. I mean, maybe the full retirement age gets a little higher. But other than that, yes, they find a way to shore it back up and make it solvent. And they will do that. They're already working on it. So you're right. Let's not talk about hypotheticals at this point, because there are so many statistics out there about actual issues. And I mean, people talk about, oh, well, a lot of people were unemployed, not contributing then to Social Security. But really, even, I mean, it's something to keep an eye on, but that's not necessarily something we need to worry about. So let's keep it going. What's another one about you had another 401k stat, right?
Well, and I like that, Tony, because I want to shift gears back to we can't control Social Security. So let's talk about what we can control, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's where we want to be, is proactive. And so with your 401k, here's another really interesting stat, is the average worker is contributing 6.2% of their income, not including the employer match. So that's a drop from an average of about 6.9% in 2015. And one of the main reasons that was cited for the decline is an increase in automatic enrollment programs. So those commonly default to contribution rates of 3% or less. And so here's the thing, Tony, is normally most employers will match at 4%. So if you're have an automatic enrollment program that puts you in at less, this is the thing, Tony, is you have a job, you're focused on your job. And if something's done automatically, you just assume it's being handled the best way as it can be.
Yeah, and you just roll with it.
You have to be your own advocate, Tony. It's the same thing in medicine. Like, I can remember my mom's a doctor, and she talks about it. She's like, you can ask your doctors questions. Don't just assume they're doing everything correctly. They're people too. and sometimes they miss things or they forget things. You have to be your own advocate.
Yep. And I think that makes perfect sense. So make sure you're putting enough into your 401k to get the match. Don't just take that automatic contribution rate, that default rate. And of course, especially big corporations are going to set that rate just below where they start giving the match, of course. But I'm glad the article and what we're talking about today, I'm glad this has had a heavy focus on 401ks, because they're obviously so critical for so many people, right?
They really are, Tony. And I like that the article brings up this other point, is 401ks, a lot of them have this option where you can take out a loan. And I never...
Sounds dangerous.
I never recommend it, Tony, but I can tell you, I had a client that did this, and we talked about it. And the thing is you take out a loan, right? You have to pay the loan back. Because well, here's the thing, Tony, though, is you don't have to pay it back, but you're going to keep getting charged interest. So theoretically, you can be putting money into your 401k and losing money at the same time because you're not paying that loan back. And
yikes.
Here's the stat. Almost the typical person right now shows that there's people who have about a balance of about $9,700, almost $10,000 is pretty common for people to have loans out of their 401ks. And it's seductive, Tony, because it feels easy, right? Because you don't have to go to the bank, and it sounds better than putting on a credit card because you don't get that bill in the mail. But it's like one of those things. It's like insidious because you have it, but it's not up in your face, and so you kind of feel like it's not a big deal.
Well, and you're always telling us, I know you say, Tara, that the retirement account is for retirement. 401ks, IRAs, there's a reason they have the 59.5 rule. And that loan thing is in there for dire emergencies. And even then, mathematically, it would make more sense to get the money from somewhere else, especially now with low interest rates. You can go to a credit union and get a, 2 to 3% loan if you have an emergency, which is going to be better than using a credit card you never want to touch your retirement accounts, right? I mean, unless you're retirement age. I mean, if you're retiring, then yes, but if you're not retiring, you got to leave it, right?
Exactly. And so you just want to make sure that, try, like you said, put a little barrier, put a wall, whatever you want to call it around. That's my 401k. That's my retirement money, and figure something else out.
All right.
And,
Well, what's
and
another stat that's
well,
shocking out there?
here's one that's I really want to foot stomp is we always talk about the basis of retirement is you want to have an emergency fund, because the emergency fund is what prevents us from going to the credit card and building debt.
Yep.
And it's just that good habit pattern I always like to start out with. I was taught when I was young, pay yourself first. And so ideally it's 10%, but figure out an amount that you can take from your paycheck every month and just push into a savings account for that emergency fund. And here's the thing, Tony, is a lot of American households have like $5,000 or left socked away for retirement. And Tony, that's about how much you need just for your emergency fund. That's not even your retirement fund.
Right.
And in people that are age 32 to 37, Tony, they generally have about $480 in savings, and that's it.
Oh, yeah. And I know that financial professionals like yourself, Tara, are always saying I always hear 3 to 6 months of income in a retirement fund. And people hear that and go, whoa. My wife and I are like, 6 months. We don't have 6 months of income in a retirement fund. But imagine when COVID had hit, had people had that, wouldn't have been an issue for so many people who became unemployed or owned small businesses that had to shut down. So it is emergencies happen, healthcare emergencies, things like this. And you're right. We've got to set up that emergency fund. So Sarah and I have gotten better about it. But people shouldn't. I hate that people say, you say 6 months and then people think, well, I can't do that. And so they really don't, they give up before they're even started. But you have to put away whatever you can save. $480 is better than $0. but it's not nearly what they'll need. And that's why so many young people get caught up using credit cards. Oh, I had a $600 car repair. Well, I don't have $600 in savings. I only have $480. Well, then there comes the credit card. And so, nope, don't use the credit card. Build up that savings. You can find an extra $50 or $100 a month to put into that savings fund. And I've heard, especially if you're younger, build up the emergency savings fund even before you start putting away for retirement. You want to put away for retirement, but you have to prioritize, right?
Well, the thing is life happens. And so that's why we say to build up your emergency fund first, because if you're getting in trouble day to day, then you're not going to be able to stick to a plan for your retirement. So it's a lot about habit pattern, Tony, but there's a large group of people out there that just go, I don't have enough to save for retirement. And I like to sit down with folks and go, well, we need to figure something out, because this is the reality. And it's tough, and it's really hard. In the Air Force, we talk about trying to do more with less. And it's a really frustrating tenet, because there's only so many resources, and you got to figure out how you're going to divide them up. But I think we need to figure out how to put ourselves first, because if you're taking care of yourself, then that lets you be able to take care of your family. And I think it just grows out and makes the whole community feel better when everybody's even able to take care of themselves a little bit. Yep,
for sure. And this has been a great show, but you know what, Dara, we're out of time. It flew by. I know that's crazy, but hey, great show. There are a lot of eye-popping retirement statistics out there that we need to be aware of. Is there anything else you want to add before we go today?
Just, Tony, I would say Chris and I have set aside 20 complimentary appointments for the folks that want to give us a call and say, I don't feel like I make enough money, but I'm willing to give it a try. The number is 719-210-4242. You got to start with baby steps. And Chris and I, Tony, we really like helping people do that. And that's the takeaway for today's show.
All right. Thanks, Tara. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Nolan Financial Radio with our host, Tara Nolan.
Join us soon for another episode. Take care, and we'll talk with you next time.